The Cooper River Bridge Run 2024. The race is done. Let's talk about it and let's talk about the plan moving forward. So here we go. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed, watching content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. It's the end of my quarter 1 race season as of right now, unless something weird comes up in the next like 2-3 weeks, but I doubt it. And yeah, we just got some stuff to kind of take a look at. Of course, we got the 2024 finisher medal. No, age group placement tchotchkes or anything like that, but we do have our race bib here, of course. Just a slight downgrade in terms of age groups, in terms of what we're doing here, or not age groups, but corral placement. I'll kind of just get into it. So before we even discuss the results of this thing, let's just talk about what the Cooper River Bridge Run really is. So if you followed this channel last year, I did race this last year under my coach's suggestion. He lives in North Carolina, so he always says, hey, come down to South Carolina and do this race because it's going to be a good time. And, I'm, 30 years old now, racing a little bit more than usual in different places outside the state of Illinois, outside of Chicago. So I said, what the heck, let's do it. Life's short. Let's go see what happens, right? So I did the race last year, and it totally whooped my ass, in the worst way possible. As for those who kind of don't know how the course goes, it's basically you start on one end of Charleston, South Carolina, on the east side in this area called Mount Pleasant. And you basically run west and you cross one of the biggest bridges in the state, which is basically just a steady uphill climb for about a mile, mile and a half. And then you do a descent, which is also a mile down. And then you end up in the actual Charleston metropolitan area. And last year when I did this, I went out super hard. And I basically blew up at the bridge really early on, which kind of sucks. And I thought I was going to lose my insides during the bridge, vomit and all that. And I think I ended up turning it into a run walk maybe twice even. And by the time I got over the bridge, or when you get over it, it was a bit smoother sailing, but I had lost all of my morale and all my speed by that point. So it was not good. That's why coming into this year, I had adjusted my goals slightly. Instead of not going out too fast, too hard to win anything for, the pride and joy of Chicago or anything of that sort. But more, it was just get over the bridge in one piece without having to stop. Just I set a more realistic goal and something that I thought was nipping at me for, I would say, over a year now of I run 10Ks all the time. How is this 10K more different than any other ones, right? Yeah, so what that I'm going a little bit faster and all this other stuff, but the goal was just to get over the bridge and then just try to PR for this course. There's no way on this course that I'm gonna run a 10K PR because it's not perfectly flat, nothing like that. So yeah, that kind of brings us to today. And long story short, I managed to get through the course in one piece, no stopping, nothing like that. And in fact, I didn't even feel that beat up after the race. And what's also really weird about that is the finishing time for me was about 41 minutes and 3 seconds, which again, this is not supposed to be a mind-blowing crazy PR for me or anything, but it is a course PR by about a couple of seconds. I think in 2023 I maybe ran it in 41:11 or 41:16. So the time that I was stopped, or not stopped, but turning it into a run walk really ate up some time into this overall PR. So it kind of tells you that overall I was running it a little bit slightly slower in segments of the course, but I wasn't too slow on the bridge is basically the idea. So the speed was consistent enough where trimming those few seconds off this time around was worth it to race it in this kind of fashion. So that was one of the things I was thinking about a couple of days ago when I was thinking of how to recap this. Was what were some of the lessons learned and what are some of the things I'm realizing as a runner at this stage of the game? So yeah, just being a little bit over 30 years old, it's not really, I'm not an old runner, I would say. I'm probably too old to be a collegiate track athlete, of course, but we're getting into an age where I'm more conscious of certain things that happen in running, right? And one of the things that I think is coming around is that I'm becoming a little bit more I don't even want to like toot my horn on this, but it's like instead of being a fast, like aggressive, all-out runner, I'm becoming a lot more of an intelligent, more tactical type of runner as I get older. So I'm leaning less towards the ideas of like going balls to the wall early on in a race and just trying to hold on for dear life. But rather now I'm like super conscious in the first mile. Like I hear that piece of my brain that says slow down because it's gonna pick up later in this negative split fashion. Just don't do anything stupid in the first mile while you're, kind of spinning up the wheels or the gears in this case. So I see myself doing that a lot more, and I've noticed that in the last 3 races that I've done, where I've surprised myself as to how slow my first miles were, and I was always catching myself wondering, like, is the entire race going to be this slow, or is this just like a subconscious, like subtle, let's take it super easy, and then let's start picking it up once things kind of get into a rhythm, right? And I think that's what a lot of people have talked about in the running world, and like maybe that's just my ignorance of not like doing that sooner, but I think it was important just to know that like there is speed, and then there's like your ability to hold on and just have those like threshold moments, and then there's like the idea of let's take it easy, let's not play for like first place or anything, let's just have a really good race and like execute a really good strategy. And then once we get the strategy and like that sort of pattern into play, let's start putting in the speed, and now we can start seriously winning stuff eventually, or like putting in really crazy PR results, because there isn't too many PRs right now in my record book since at least 2022, about late 2022 I would say. 2023, not too many crazy times raced right now, just because that was a pretty bad year for me as a runner. And 2024, we're starting off really well. It's just now we're getting to a very crucial point where volume is going to be important to continue progression for potential PRs. We'll get there in a second. But yeah, back to Cooper River. The first segment of the race, like, took it super easy. Well, let's back up even before that. Let's talk pre-race. This is where things are always fun. So you can get to this race one of a couple of ways, right? One, you can either like have a hotel or like live in metropolitan Charleston, and there's like certain meeting places in the city that you can go to that take a shuttle bus across the bridge and into Mount Pleasant, right? Or you can be on the Mount Pleasant side already and just walk the start line and you're just kind of there. And then after the race, you take a ferry back to Mount Pleasant. So couple of ways of doing that, of course. It's a point-to-point race. It's not like a loop or anything of that sort, so it makes things kind of interesting and fun. Pre-race wise, it was pretty cold in the morning. It was like 40-something degrees, so it's weird that the Wednesday before we flew in, it was like snowing in Chicago, and then us trying to escape the cold, it's cold in Charleston, which is also bizarre, because last year was like a lot warmer, and I remember just having heat fun that time around. So it was cold that morning, but like I was prepared. We had sweatpants, sweaters, all that stuff. But once we're like strapped into like the race gear, kind of like attire, it's pretty cold. It's the humidity was okay. I would say it was more of the wind that was really messing things up. And I know I was definitely shivering in the morning. The lady was shivering in the morning too. Like a lot of other people were probably just used to it, but being the third biggest 10K in the country, I think there's a benefit to when you sit in your corral. There's a lot of people that kind of create that warmth circle, so that was kind of okay, I suppose. But what else? Let's see. I remember I had to pee really bad before the race even started when I was taking my nutrition and just kind of getting the bowels moving. And I just remember like standing in some really long lines for some porta potties, and like by the time I finally pissed and all that, like my kidneys were just like sore. I remember just like almost having to like lay on the ground holding my kidneys, thinking like, Jesus, like I was really holding that for a long time. I'm never doing that. I'll just piss my pants if I have to. Like it was bad. So that was like about 10 minutes before the race started. So I raced in of course the Adios Pro 3s from Adidas. This was the shoe that we've been consistently sticking with at this time for testing and for race purposes, just to see if we can break away from the tradition of using Nike race shoes. So far so good in this pair, right? And basically we laced them up, got to the start line. Everything was smooth sailing at the beginning. I intentionally kept it slower, and I knew that because people were kind of passing me up early on. I just didn't want to like have that fight early or anything like that, because I knew once the bridge was coming up, like, things were going to kind of settle down, right? So as we're all climbing the bridge, like, the pace hasn't really settled down for a lot of people. I think I'm still getting past a little bit, but I'm also keeping my pace fairly consistent. Like, I can see on the watch that, yeah, I dropped from, like, running 640s or 650s early on to, like, a 710 as I'm going up the bridge. And then as we start descending the bridge, now I'm like kicking into like 620 territory, 615 territory. So I'm like, okay, the speed is like okay for, me being like this average amateur runner. And what's happening now is like something I didn't think about is that once we got off the bridge and off the descent and we were on Meeting Street, which is like in the metropolitan area right off the bridge, that's when I started noticing people breaking down seriously. And that was like maybe mile 4.5. And that was like the first time it clicked with me, like, okay, let's take some heads, right? Like, let's start passing people. And like, I had the strength and like the charisma to do it, which was unusual for the first time in a really long time, because usually at that point in a race, I'm like those people where I'm just holding on for dear life with whatever's left in like my just in the tank, more or less. And this is the first time I'm finding myself with like a lot of kick still left over, and I'm like, okay, cool, let's just kick up this street, and then once we take this turn on, I think it was like Wooble or whatever the other street is, and we do like the little loop going west to north, I just kind of kept my cool. I was following a small pack of people, and like one person like way in the back of my corral like sprinted past us, but like no one was passing me at that point, so I was feeling pretty good about it. I knew like I wasn't going to place very well, but I know that like I wasn't dying. I wasn't like choking. I wasn't like gonna vomit or anything at this point in the race. And I just remember having a decently big kick at the end of the race, which was nice. It's been a minute since I've had like big kicks that ended in a pretty good way. And in this case, I didn't like puke. I didn't like die or anything at the end. So it definitely helped to have a really good kick at the end. Just at least to have the fuel for it. So like, again, it's that running intelligence is kind of coming back of like, hey, let's save a little bit for the very end. Let's not just like get to the finish line and be completely dead if the training was done correctly. Like I talked about in the March Madness review that I had like from a month back or so, that like I did not train properly. So by the time I got to the end of the race, I was very much dead and like a mile more, and like there was no way it was going to happen. I digress. And then maybe some of you who follow me on Instagram and Strava, like you've probably seen this clip. Shortly after the race, I guess, to put this in perspective, like for Charleston, like the Cooper River Bridge is basically like it gets the same media coverage that the Chicago Marathon gets, okay? So they got this guy like interviewing at the end of the race, and I guess they catch me at the end because I'm wearing my Chicago Marathon like tank top. So I'll post a clip of it. I don't know if we'll play the whole thing. I don't know if it's going to get like copyright struck or anything like that. But we'll just kind of let it run just so you see what happens, what was talked about. But yeah, here it is.
Really fast runners. These are really elite runners. These are not people who are a joke. These are people who are finishing in 30, 35 minutes. That's pretty darn good. Let's see if we have anybody interesting we can go and find. How was it? Was it great? Did you really run the Chicago Marathon?
I'm from Chicago.
You're from Chicago.
Second time running. This is a great race.
So you come from Chicago to run the Cooper River Bridge Run every year?
Of course, yeah.
Why is that?
Just a good time, good training for the Chicago Marathon itself. I know people who run Boston. This is a good race for them to train on. So yeah, it's a good time.
All right. Well, did you think you earned yourself some deep dish pizza tonight?
Oh gosh, I hope so.
Yeah,
Better. You guys have good deep dish here?
Better what?
You guys have good deep dish here?
We do. We have Detroit style here. We have Chicago style here, and we have New York style here.
Sold.
Yeah, we have plenty of pizza in this town. Go enjoy it. Have a great day.
So yeah, long story short, like they caught me by surprise, but the interview was like pretty nice. And no, I didn't get Chicago style pizza. I did end up getting seafood, because when you go to Charleston, you're not there for pizza. You're there for the seafood, right? And no sponsorships, no paid endorsements here, but like the best place you need to go is called Fleet Landing, and you need to get the seafood pasta. No questions, no exceptions. You have to try it. It's like the world's best pasta, and I've like thought about it for over a year when I got it last year, and then I was coming in, I was like, I need to get this thing. Anyways, yeah, so that was cool. Interviews and things like that. So it was an overall really great way to end the first quarter of racing on a high note, which is that, like, I survived March Madness, which ended up prepping me for Cooper River and all sorts of other runs going forward. I finished Shamrock Shuffle in a good spot, and then Cooper River Bridge run, I got over the bridge without stopping, and I actually ended up running a really good 10K time. So quarter one, feeling pretty good about it. And now it's happening at basically this Q2 mode, as you can see on the calendar, is it's a work cert week, so I have to end up getting some work certifications more or less while I have this grace period, and then I do travel to Houston for some other work engagements, so if you're in Houston, let me know. But anyways, yeah, that's kind of happening, and we got some volume training that's happening in the meantime, so we got to start building into half marathon fitness once more and actually start getting into that marathon window. As the Soldier Field 10 miler is coming up next month, so just a 10-mile race, but that quickly goes into the Chicago 13.1. So that half marathon fitness needs to be in a really good spot and almost into like a marathon sort of training block as we get there, just because that entire summer, this fun time window, is going to be nuts if everything goes as planned. So yeah, we'll leave it at that for now, I suppose. So Q1, Cooper River, good spot. And I guess, yeah, that's where we'll leave it at. So more to come. Stay tuned for it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.